sit. This is Monza, and Monza is a very handsome Dalmatian, as you can see. But he had an experience that was kind of a traumatic experience, and after that experience, he's been very skittish of sounds that happen outside of his place. And he has what we call cortisol in his blood. Cortisol is the stress hormone. If you ever seen a dog that's really twitchy, that's probably a good opportunity or explanation for it. Is cortisol is a stress hormone, and it prepares us for fight or flight. It shuts down all non-essential body functions and accelerates your breathing and your respiratory system so you can fight or flight. And it's helpful in short periods of time. However, veterans, first responders, people in really stressful situations for long periods of time have cortisol in their blood for too long, and it actually leads to PTSD. And dogs can absolutely suffer from PTSD as well, and I'm pretty sure that that's a little bit of what's going on with him. So cortisol makes everything amplified. If you're waiting in line at a haunted house and somebody comes up and taps you on the shoulder to tell you they got a ticket, you jump a little bit, that's because of the cortisol in your blood. Now, when that's the case, then it makes a physical manifestation as well as a psychological one. If you see his back legs in the video, you see how he's leaning towards me? That's a good indication of your dog not being comfortable about something. And I think it's because of the cortisol. So typical signs of cortisol, see how he's kind of leaning like that. They'll hunch over, they're really twitchy, they slink away or squirt around the room when sounds happen. Sometimes they're reactive to sounds that are benign sounds. So we have one of the guardians is outside the place right now, and she's going to try to make some sounds to try to mimic some of the things that he reacts to. Now, he only does this when he's inside. He doesn't do it when he's outside. Outside, there's a lot of distractions. And you see, even that little sound right there kind of caused him to be a little skittish. Sit. And so when you're outside, there's a lot of distractions. So instead of the dog focusing on one thing, they're kind of slightly distracted, and that helps them not focus on it. Now, I showed the guardians a focus exercise, ironically, which will actually stop the production of cortisol. Sit. In the dog's brain, and that's a nice thing. That's a great way to help reduce his anxiety. Now, if a dog is stressful or twitchy, or you can tell it has the stress hormone, cortisol, in his blood, the best thing you do is increase the distance between them and whatever they're reacting to. However, in his case, there's a lot of sounds. This is, like I said, stuff that happens outside, and he barks at it, he runs around the place, he gets upset. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use counter-conditioning to help a dog feel good about stimulus. And stimulus are going to be the sounds that you can make outside. Now, to begin this, I have high-value training treats. And you see he really likes my training treats. These are chicken liver. When it comes to food, the most important thing in the dogs is the smell. The temperature is the second most important. Taste is a distant third. So you want a really strong-smelling treat when you're doing this sort of exercise. These are meat treats. And if you can see, I can let him nibble on it, and I can change whatever direction he looks by wherever I hold the treat. And so when I'm doing this, depending on the stimulus, I want to, my two tests. First of all, can I get the dog to sit and take a treat? If the dog won't sit or take a treat, that means it's too close to the stimulus, or the stimulus is too intense. So I lower the intensity of the stimulus in a couple different ways. I can increase the distance between me and the stimulus. I can have the stimulus moving in a slower motion, so slow down the speed, or I can turn down the volume if that's appropriate, if it's like a concert or something that's repeatable. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to take these treats, and this is what the treats look like. They're like a pellet. I'm going to smash it, so now it's smashed like a pancake. And so I'm doing this so that the dog now doesn't get it all in one bite. He's got to nibble and get it in about 3 or 4 bites. Now, the first couple of times you do this, we want to do this independent of the stimulus happening. And if when you're doing this, the dog reacts to the stimulus. I do this a lot with dogs that like bark at the doorbell. Well, if the dog barks at the doorbell, we're about 10 feet away from the door, or from wherever the chime would be, then I move maybe 20 feet away or 30 feet away. Or I might have somebody putting a pillow on top of the doorbell chime to lower the intensity. All right, so are we ready outside? Yep. All right. That was perfect. So that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. All right, Monza, come here, buddy. So you could probably just say yep again, but this time I'm going to say it in a lot quieter volume, about 50% of what you said it there. Sit. Yep. A little bit louder. Yep. So I'm laughing with his paw up because that can actually mean please. Monza. Sit. All right, louder still. Yep. And louder. So you see, because he's getting the paw, this is what we call a reinforcer. He's having, Monza, the reinforcer. I'm going to have you kick some of that sand now if you can. Okay, stop. Monza. so right there, the first 2 kicks were okay, and that was my fault. I wasn't specific enough. So what I wanted just was 1 kick, but I said kicks, so she did literally what I said. So when you're doing this, again, you want to make it the easiest version possible. Once the dog reacts like that, he's not going to hear anything. He's basically hysterical. Monza. So this time we're going to do a single kick, and I'm going to combine this. And when you're doing this, you need to be delivering the reinforcer first at first. Okay, give me a single kick, please. So you see, that time we didn't get any response. All right, let's get another kick, please. And again. So you see there, he stopped for a second, but he didn't react. The whole point of this exercise, we want the dog to practice being calm while they're exposed to stimulus. Now, I do this in 2 ways. The first way, we want the dog to not react. Monza, so we do it like this. Sit. So I'm squishing the treat. I start delivering the treat, and I ask for another 3 scratches, please. There we go. Now, for those 3 scratches in the future, we'd want them on top of each other. And again, my fault for not being specific. Now, this is what we do at first. We're giving the reinforcer at the same time, or right before this happens, because we want him to stop reacting and practice not reacting. And we, again, make sure the intensity level is low enough where he doesn't feel a need to react. Monza. So now I'm going to go ahead and sit. All right, I'm going to ask for 1 single scratch right now, please. Now I give him the treat. So at first when you're doing it, you're using the treat as a lure to distract him and keep his focus here. And we're giving the reinforcer first, then he hears the stimulus. But the important transition that we make, Monza, is that after a while, once he's practiced enough, he's not reacting because he's listening to it, then we want the stimulus to happen, and then the treat comes after. What essentially happens is that sound becomes now a command word for I'm about to get a treat. All right, let's get another scratch right now, please. So after a while, instead of him barking when he hears the scratching saying, violator, intruder, there's an infidel outside, the scratch means I'm about to get a treat. Can we get more people outside scratching, please? So one of the things, what I'd like the guardians to do is I'd like them to make a list of all of the sounds that he reacts to. And whenever a dog fails, and this is what I do as a dog psychologist, when a dog fails and doesn't behave the way that I want, I ask myself, how can I recreate that situation in the easiest version possible and create a positive association? And oftentimes I break it down individual steps. In this case, we're not going to do steps. We're just going to trigger the stimulus, but in a controlled situation. If he hears the trash man come, we don't know when that's going to happen. So we arrange to have somebody out there we control the situation where that person can do it on response. Now, I talked to the guardians about this off camera, but I'm going to remind them right now because anybody else watching needs to do this the same way. If we always say now, and then there's the stimulus, after a while now becomes a command word, something's about to happen. So what I usually do is at first I say, maybe the first time I say now. Second time I'm talking and I say, every time you hear me say a number, then I want you to make that sound. Or next time I say, every time you say a color or a city name or an actor, come up with different things, or every time I cough. So he just never knows when the stimulus is going to happen, but we're in on it. And the idea is to systematically deprogram him from the negative perception of that particular stimulus. So that was a scratch outside the door. Now, we might do a scratch over here, scratch over there, 1 scratch, 2 scratches, 3 scratches, and so on and so forth. But eventually it gets to the point where no scratches anywhere outside elicit a response. Then we go to the next thing, which is maybe dropping glass bottles into a recyclable bin, or people talking outside, or somebody using the horn on a bird or something like that. So we're just going to basically make a list of all those things, help him systematically deprogram. Now, I'll give you a couple other tips before we wrap this up. I do this a lot with dogs that are afraid of skateboards. Skateboards, now that's a moving stimulus. So what I would do is have the dog here and sitting, looking at it. Make sure when you're doing something visual, the dog is looking at the stimulus. In this case, I'd maybe have the guy, I have him keep on trying to go parallel to us. Maybe I try at like 30 feet and he's going parallel, and it's my dog sitting and taking treat. Cool. Then go to 20 feet, sitting and taking. 10 feet, he won't sit. Okay, so we've passed his breaking point. So I have the person maybe back up to 15 feet in practice. If he sits and takes the treat then we know we've found the appropriate distance. We want to get him as close to the stimulus as possible without him reacting. I'm laughing because we've kept him on the couch the whole time and he decided to get himself on the couch. He's a smart dog. He's a Dalmatian, of course. He's taking advantage. But basically what we want to do is basically expose them to it when they're calm and enough distance where they're not reactive, then get closer and closer and closer. And then for the skateboarder, I might have the guy going really slow at 15 feet. then a little bit faster, and then I'm going as fast as you can at 15 feet when the dog's just looking at it and not even bothering. Then I have to go to 14 feet, and I go at this point back to going very slow. Then we speed up faster and faster. And as this process goes, you can kind of accelerate it, but remember, if the dog reacts, we push too far too fast. The whole point of this is to expose the dog to the stimulus without any reaction whatsoever. Monza, we're ready. Can we come over here? Let's face the camera and let everybody see how handsome you are again. Well, this is Monza, and these are tips and tricks on how you can use counter conditioning to help a dog get over being fearful around different sights, sounds, and smells.